Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Alan Law. I'm the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Commission. Members of the commission in attendance this evening are Councillor Adrian Abbs, James Cole, Lee Dillon, Tom Marino, Steve Masters, Claire Rolls, and Tony Vickers. We have some other members joining us virtually. That's the leader and Councillor Lynn Doherty, Steve Ardar Walter, and Ross McKinnon. I don't see Ross. I spoke to him earlier today and he was telling me he had one or two health problems. So is Ross actually on?
I don't believe he is, Chairman.
Yeah, he did tell me today he probably would not be attending. Okay. The council officers present to advise and support the meeting are Bill Bagnall, Jenny Graham, Catherine Mackin, or McCant, whichever way she wants to have that pronounced. She says she's happy either way, and Shiraz Sheikh. I'm supported by Gordon Oliver as the clerk and Christine Essler as the Zoom host for this evening's meeting. Now, before we start, we've got the usual explanations to explain to the benefit of members of the public who may be watching that this meeting tonight will be held in what's called a hybrid format over both Zoom and with members present here in the council chamber. Following the end of the emergency coronavirus regulations that permitted remote meetings, all of the council's public meetings must now take place in person at a single specified geographical location with a physical presence at that location, in other words, here in the council chamber. The current COVID-safe capacity of the council chamber means that not all attendees are able to attend in person, and so some members not on the commission and some officers will be joining remotely via Zoom, as I've already mentioned. Please note that the meeting has been live streamed via YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings. I would ask that members use their Zoom hand, please, to indicate that when they would like to speak. All voting, if required, will also be done by a show of physical hands. I'd now like to move on onto the agenda, unless there's any questions. I don't see any. Clark, do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chairman. Councillors Jeff Brooks, Gareth Hurley have given their apologies, and Councillor Adrian Abbs is substituting for Councillor Brooks.
Thank you very much. And I'd like now to move to the next item, which is approval of the minutes of our last two meetings. The first one is minutes on the 6th of July. Can anybody like to comment on those? Councillor Master, Steve.
I was just going to say I'm happy to propose them, Chair. If
okay, well, I've got a proposal. Have any got a seconder for that? Councillor Cole? If that's the case, just a show of hands, please. All those in favour of those minutes? That's fine. Thank you. I then move on to the minutes of the 10th of August. Anybody got any comments? Councillor Abt?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I did notice that quite a lot of the discussion that went on doesn't seem to have been minuted, with specific reference to questions I asked Nick Carter about the amount of people involved. And I distinctly remember him saying the maximum of 60 people. And
right.
The question was related to the £150,000 a year, and that's clearly 1,000 people. None of that seems to be minuted, which
there's a few things. I was actually going to come to that as well. Not that specific point. Do you have any other specific points that you feel that?
Yeah, there was things about the assembly. It sounds like you're on top of this as well, though. There seems to be quite a lot missing from the minutes that was discussed.
I'm a little bit more general rather than specific, actually.
Well, almost everything I said seems to have been not in the minutes.
I actually felt, if members agree, I actually felt that some of the key debating points were missing. For example, it was highlighted that the project manager had yet to be appointed and or confirmed, and that isn't in the minutes. Also, it was highlighted that the detailed project implementation plan had yet to be produced, and that's not mentioned. It was also confirmed by Nick Carter and the leader, Lynn Doherty, that the incoming new chief executive, we've got some Hawaiian music coming from somewhere. It's all right, Mr. Obama, you're okay. It's confirmed that the new incoming chief executive was fully aware and been briefed on the Time Lord 2 and was supportive of the concept. That was what I was suggesting be updated, Clark, and do we agree to that? Would you like to add anything more specific?
Yeah, I'm specifically about the numbers, the questions relating to the numbers. I'd like to see that in the minute, please, because I think it's going to come back later on.
Okay.
And there's also I made some comments about assumptions made in savings about how fast the buildings related to how fast the buildings would be to be sold, and there was some kind of worry from me about that the assumptions built into the savings. So you want to
suddenly get you express concern.
Yeah, but since then we've obviously had the Vodafone announce that they're downsizing for, which is going to make those comments even more valid.
Well,
so I think
it
was all said that it should be in the minutes. Is what
we're going beyond minutes. So can I just? There's a specific number you mentioned, and there's a concern that the speed of
the speed of delivery of the selling of the two properties and the assumptions built into the report about the net savings the council would enjoy by disposing.
That you had expressed concern.
Very much so.
That's
because I was arguing the accuracy of that information.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're arguing, expressed concern and arguing the accuracy of the information. Are we all happy with that? I mean, I recall those debates.
I'll happily second those changes on block, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks very much. So that as a show of hands, we got. So who proposed it, by the way?
I thought you were from the chair.
Well, I will propose it from the chair. I didn't, but I will. And you're seconded. Thank you. So are they acceptable? Show of hands? Fine. Okay, good. Thank you. And we next move on to the next item. Crib sheet here, which is actions arising from previous meeting. And I would ask the clerk, Stephen, to highlight those, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Gordon.
So in relation to Action 39, members just asked to note that additional data has been provided on how usage of each of the council's car parks has changed between 2018-19 and 2020-21. And that just demonstrates the impact of the COVID pandemic. And that was the extra information that had been requested. Item 43, it's been stipulated that future OSMC meetings must be 2 weeks in advance of executive meetings to allow sufficient time for comments on quarterly finance and performance reports to be properly communicated. So future meeting dates will be discussed as part of a later item in this agenda. Items 47 and 48, just to note that Councillor Masters and Councillor Dillon were due to provide further details of requests for changes to the scope of the Thames Water Review and an additional item on the council's review of the council's telephone system. So those two are just outstanding.
Yeah, thank you. Just on those two actions, I think the telephone issue will get picked up later on when we consider future work items because it's within the terms of reference of that review. And in terms of the Thames Water one, I think it was for Councillor Masters to send me some suggestions to incorporate within the draft terms that I had originally tabled.
No,
you haven't got those yet. Yeah.
No, we've not.
Okay, well, so for next meeting, please, can we get those complete? Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, declaration of interest. Anyone? Declarations of interest? Nobody I can see. Councillor Arms, your hands up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I simply that I'm a ward member up in Monks Lane, and I may well mention Monks Lane and the football hub later on as one of the items.
Right.
So.
Okay.
My hand is up, Chairman.
And go ahead.
Yeah, just to say that I'm a member of Newby Town Council, which has a well-known view on the London Roads Industrial Estate, but this isn't a planning meeting, so I will be taking part in the debate.
Fine, thank you. Okay, next item is petitions. Do we have any petitions? I'm not aware of any.
We don't have any, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, good. So let's move then rapidly to item 6, which is the council motion that was referred to OSMC. You may all recall that Councillor Dillon raised a motion that he felt should have been debated at council. I agreed with him that the motion should have come to OSMC. It should have possibly been handled by planning. However, in his wisdom, the chairman on the night referred to OSMC, and here we are this evening. So what I intend to do is to ask, and I think Councillor Dillon is handing it over to Councillor Vickers to lead off, but I would like the three members who want to speak for this motion to speak. Don't spend too long on it, please. Otherwise we'll have a long evening. Once you've finished, I'm going to ask members just to ask you questions of clarification, not just clarification, not debate. I'll then go on to the portfolio holders and the officers to give a response. And when that's finished, then we can have more detailed questions and debate. Is that okay? Fine. So, Councillor Dillon, your motion, or Councillor Vickers, do you want to?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. This motion is about how the executive has acted in regard to the local planning authority's policies, specifically Core Strategy Policy 18, CS 18 on green infrastructure. I'm speaking first as the opposition's planning spokesman. Councillor Dillon, as opposition leader, is calling the executive to account for the way it has managed a key asset and taxpayers' money in the light of planning policy. The response to the motion in our papers tonight states that no decision has been made on the football club site at executive, end of quotes. However, I put it to you, Chairman, colleagues, that the executive has made numerous decisions about the site in the past several years, in particular since it ended the football club's lease in 2018. It is the planning authority that has yet to make a decision, and the planning authority is a different body. It is essential to distinguish between the role of the executive and the LPA, as I'm sure all of us agree. The executive acts as both landowner and now promoter of this site as a development site, and is the custodian of local taxpayers' money and other assets, including the public land known as the London Road Industrial Estate, LRIE, of which the football ground is still, in policy terms, a key part until planning policy formally changes. It is in that role that the executive has acted. All of us councillors comprise the LPA, and in that role, we employ professional planners and lawyers to manage the development plan process and development management. There is no planning policy in place that supports the executive, what the executive aspires to achieve. Avison Young pointed that out in their report last year, and it is still true. The executive and its senior officers are in denial over this. That's why I've consistently said, bring on the planning application, an outline application for the whole of the LRIE and for the executive's plan to replace football facilities on another site. The OSMC report we have tonight completely misses the point. Of course, OSMC isn't able to review or scrutinise decisions by planning committees, but we can scrutinise the executive's decisions on how it spends taxpayers' money and its actions in the light of known facts about planning policy. So the report is misleading. And because of the insistence of the executive to proceed with moving the football facilities in Faraday Road, owned outright by this public body, to a site owned by a private body, the rugby club, apparently on a 40-year lease, millions of pounds worth of public money and officer time and 10 years of potentially increased business rates income have been either spent already, committed to future budgets, or foregone. And all of this has been done while flying in the face of planning policy, both national and local, most notably in the specific area of green infrastructure. On that, we have been made aware of independent planning advice. That is not my layman's opinion, but the opinion of an experienced senior planner who has written to the Secretary of State, no less, as some of you may know, asking him to intervene and take the matter out of this council's hands. All because the executive has allegedly acted contrary to planning policy. Now, I'm not going to read out what CS18 says. It's in the motion and it's in our agenda pack. Whilst there is no loss of GI incurred immediately in Faraday Road in terms of area of grass from the planning application due to come before District Planning Committee next week, there has been considerable, I quote, harm to its use and enjoyment, end of quotes, for the last 3 years as a direct result of the actions of the executive contrary to planning policy. The public have been shut out of the ground. The stands have been shipped to Hungerford. The clubhouse has been burnt down, all under the executive's watch. Making the football ground into an informal recreation area may mitigate some of the harm done and preserve the green space for a few years. But the report to Western Area Planning and now to DPC makes clear that this is only until the LRIE redevelopment begins, probably several more years. It is only being done to remove the status of this land as a football ground, as far as I can see. Let's assume that this can be called an exception under CS18, because otherwise GI simply should not be lost and harm to its enjoyment should not be allowed by the LPA. That has not yet been put to the test in planning policy terms. But if the planning officer recommendation to DPC is accepted, then a precedent will have been set. Other developers will be feeling they've got permission to sacrifice green space on their sites because of the precedent set by no less than the leaders of this community in West Berkshire, this council's executive. But even in exceptional cases, new GI, I quote, of equal or greater size and standard will be required in an accessible location close by. Monks Lane is not as accessible as Faraday Road's new, but arguably unwanted, recreation ground, nor is it close by any stretch of the imagination. Moreover, there's no certainty that the Monks Lane Sports Hub will gain planning consent. The executive can push for that all it likes, like any applicant in the planning process. But it will be a very poor example to others for the LPA to allow one planning application at Faraday Road to gain consent in the hope that another one over 2 miles away will gain consent also. But the executive doesn't care. The key players don't live anywhere near Newbury. The Monks Lane facility is not as good a standard of GI in any case. It is replacing a grassed area with an artificial surface for sporting use, which will be an ecological desert, even if it is coloured green. So the executive proposals involve overall a net loss of area and quality of green infrastructure, flying in the face of planning policy. You may argue, Mr. Chairman, that this is in accord with the playing pitch strategy. Well, maybe it is, but that is not planning policy, although it may be a material consideration. So we believe on the opposition side, which can be seen as, if you like, the executive in waiting of this council, that all the planning applications relating to LRIE and the football facilities in Newbury should be seen as part of a single project, not just in executive business planning terms, but in development management terms by the LPA. We would have fast-tracked the work of site investigation and outline planning on the site years ago. It would have cost more upfront, but it would have provided more certainty about what was possible in planning policy and in development cost terms. LRIE is undoubtedly a high-value location, but with its contamination and other factors, it's undoubtedly going to need a very high outlay of taxpayers' money and development skill to build out. Under environmental impact assessment, or EIA regs, the cumulative impact of the LRI proposals, of which building on the football ground will be the first phase for cash flow reasons, according to the executive's adopted master plan, means that this work should be undertaken before or as part of an outline planning application for the whole area. There's no case for making the current application on the site other than to continue preventing football taking place there. Coming to a close, Chairman, at the end of the day, whether or not football stays in Faraday Road, as we believe it should and still could if we take control of the council in 18 months, or whether it moves elsewhere, the executive is surely duty-bound to act as more than just another landowner developer, but as the leader of our community. That means following planning policy and perhaps even exceeding it where there is justification in terms of maximisation of the value of this site in every sense to Newbury. Chairman, the executive has set a thoroughly bad example so far, and it is our job in OSMC to say so. Thank you.
I have some hands up, and I'm not quite sure the reasons for them. So let me just check it. The first one was Councillor Abbs. What was the reason for your hand being up?
So I'd follow on from Councillor Vickers.
Oh, well, I thought that was already stated, but that's fine. Okay. Councillor Masters, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to add some concerns of my own. First available.
At the first available, well, if that's fine. Okay. Well, is this a preemptive strike to get in the top of the queue? Was it? That's fine. Okay. Councillor Abbs, if you could say what you have to say, can you be a little bit more brief than your colleague has been, if you don't mind?
That is almost guaranteed.
We really don't want to repeat the same arguments.
Thank you for that, Chairman. Okay, well, following on from Councillor Vickers' excellent summary of the situation, I'd like us as a committee to consider the biodiversity net gain legislation. It's obviously a different subject completely.
It is a different subject completely, and it's not the subject.
Well,
of this
Chairman,
motion.
you will have to bear with me for a few.
Well, I will bear with you for a few moments.
I make the connection.
But I've marked your card. This is not a subject from the motion.
So, Chairman, biodiversity net gain is in the NPPF. NPPF is part of council policy by de facto standards. So it is absolutely part of this debate this evening.
I disagree. This debate's about the football club.
Well, that's not the wording of the motion at all.
That is exactly the wording of the motion.
It's about the executive.
I'm
sorry,
excuse me, Councillor.
It would be far quicker if I just say.
Councillor, excuse me. Can I have some respect,
you are not
please?
doing me
Stop
the courtesy.
talking over me, please.
No, Chairman, because you are not giving me the courtesy of even letting me say a paragraph, let alone more than a paragraph.
Can I just? You're finished now. Can I make the point? This motion is to do with the football pitch, and it's specifically to do with planning CS 18.
And my points are specifically to that point.
Can I ask his mic to be turned off, please? Because I'd like to finish what I've got to say without him interrupting.
So would I.
Thank you very much. It's specifically that, and I am not allowing you to wander into other areas. And if you continue to do so, I will have that mic removed from you permanently. I don't wish to do that. I'm trying to be.
Do we have legal support here this evening? Mr. Shiraz, you're there.
Excuse me, through the chair, please.
Oh, through the chairman then. But you're saying you're acting in a way that is.
I'm trying to control a meeting, and you are continuously over
about 15 words before you did this.
You should be able to turn his mic off.
No, we shouldn't. You are chairman. You are not a dictator. You're acting as a dictator, Chairman.
When I ask you to be quiet, may I have respect, and then I shall let you speak. But I will only let you speak on relevant topics. Now, if we disagree on those relevant topics, so be it. But for one reason or another, I'm chairing this meeting, not your good self. And if you don't agree with how I chair it, you're fully obliged. You can report me to the monitoring officer, because I have not in my opinion, I have not overstepped my mark. I can, as chairman, define what topics you discuss and what you can't. Do you understand that?
I do understand that, yes,
Thank
Chairman.
you.
So what I'm saying to you is the introduction of biodiversity net gain legislation is part of our NPPF, part of council policy, and you cannot get away with it simply by saying it's not part of CS 18. It's exceptionally important to understand what I was about to say, so the OSMC can make their own judgment about whether or not the executive is breaking its own policy.
Can I make the point that if you wanted to raise that issue through your leader, it should have been noted on the motion? You are taking this beyond the wording of this motion. And if that's all you've got to say, I'd like to move on, please.
No,
Councillor
it isn't.
Dillon.
It wasn't all I had to say. And we've spent more time debating this than it would have for me to read the few words I had in front of me.
Well,
So,
well, make another point then, please. It's relevant.
Okay, well, it's very clear to me that in these uncertain times and the rapidly evolving needs of these uncertain times, that there is a significant risk associated with this project. And risk is one of the things that Addison Young bring out in their report as well. The difference is between CS18 and the point I was going to make was that that risk puts the council and the executive in a terrible position going forward, and in terms of meeting the biodiversity net gain needs. So I can't avoid using that word, I'm afraid. But anyway, further to all of that, and I guess I will be taking this up afterwards as why I can't make the point, a very simple point I was going to make, considering it goes to the heart of what the council is actually trying to decide right now. But I will respect.
Councillor Abbs, in your opinion.
Chairman, could I just get a sentence out without the interrupting?
You've had at least
do me that.
At least 3 or 4 minutes of non-interruption, and you're keeping coming back to the same point that I have ruled.
I'd already moved
that
on.
I have ruled will not be discussed here this evening.
The most
Okay.
appalling chairman I've
Then
ever sat
if you
under.
don't agree to that, then take it further outside this
I
meeting.
will. If that is the challenge, Chairman, I'm quite happy to. Can I finish my sentence, please?
Carry on,
Thank you
but not
very
on
much
that
indeed.
topic.
Well, you're also introducing change of use during this to be considered here, and change of use has kind of happened by default at the moment because the actual grounds have been burnt down. However, nobody else would be allowed to come forward with a change of use without going through the planning process. It is in fact embedded in the planning process. So I again postulate that the executive have gone beyond their decision making and by not bringing, in fact, the decision making must have been made contrary to what the report says, because a planning app has been brought forward. How can we say that it hasn't been brought forward when district planning sits next week to actually make a decision on a planning application, which is change of use? So the exact wording of the motion brings in CS18, but also we are sitting here judging whether the executive are doing things according to policy, and they aren't. It's very clear and very simple. I think it's a great pity that you interrupted me, sir, and didn't let me get another key point, but I'll happily copy in everybody after this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a point of information, Chairman?
Yes, sir.
The word biodiversity is in the actual policy of CS18 under para 15125. And I think the whole idea of biodiversity net gain has come in later than the core strategy and is therefore is current national planning policy and is therefore relevant. So I think although there is a separate core strategy policy on biodiversity and geodiversity, as we're getting close to another local plan, I would have thought that, I'm not a planning professional, as you know, but we are supposed to take account of the NPF where there is no adequate policy already in our local plan.
I'm sorry, I was getting some advice from legal.
Sorry, Chairman, I was just going to just suggest that you have ruled on the matter. So under the Constitution 6.14.1, once you've ruled on the matter, that is it.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to say that there's a great danger of this debate is just talking about planning, and planning, in fact, is not the remit of this commission. That is for the planning authority, which is for the planners and possibly for committees. And we're in great danger of confusing those two. I understand why we could be confusing those two, but there we go. Councillor Abbs.
Thank you. It was read through the chair. The question is to the legal representative. Surely the chairman has the ability to change his mind, having been informed of further information. He surely can change his ruling if he wants to.
With your permission. So I was merely pointing out addressing your question, Councillor Abbs, that if you, in terms of disorderly conduct, if you persistently disregard the ruling of the chairman, then there's a procedure that can be followed by the chairman. I was alerting the chairman to that fact because there was a lot of arguing going on.
Yeah, I think we spent enough time on this particular topic. I'm not changing my mind. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Abbs had shared his comments with me before the meeting, and obviously with the knowledge of the policy of which we were referring to in our motion, therefore felt it was adequate content. It wasn't to expand the remit of the debate by any means. And actually, Mr. Chairman, you make a really interesting point about it not being a planning issue. If this goes to Western Area Planning and members of council ask the executive as the promoter of the site questions about cost, they'll be told, we don't need to answer that. That's a policy question. We then table a motion to full council, the main body of this council, and it gets referred by the chairman of council to OSMC without the chairman of OSMC's blessing. It feels that whenever an issue or a challenge is raised by any opposition voice on London Road, that the council do its best to obfuscate the argument and to push it into a committee whereby only half of it is relevant. What we need, if this is a major development for our area, is a full and open debate where we can talk about where we believe the executive have put forward proposals and ideas that are in contrary to how they vote as a planning authority. We believe that as a local community, we should be leading by best practice. And we have, believe, within our motion, put down evidence where we think that the council hasn't acted within our core policies. If you look at the overall loss of green space, that is evident. Whether you take Councillor Doherty's email to be meaningful in terms of deliverability, by that, Lynn, I mean, you have a timescale of December for your second pitch, your second grass pitch to replace the one at Faraday Road, but you don't tell the public where that pitch is. Let's have an open and full and transparent conversation about the football provision that's all in one phase or one set of policies. If we had that, as Councillor Vickers advocated in his speech, then we would have an open policy for the public to be able to comment on. And we would all know where we were going as a planning authority, as well as an executive and as well as a council. There is no opportunity for all members of council, it seems, Mr. Chairman, to debate anymore in this council. The referring of motions is happening all too frequently. You know, I've raised those concerns with yourself and I've raised them in the chamber before. And yet this is another example of it. In terms of how this debate proceeds, Mr. Chairman, we fundamentally disagree in the report about how officers have evaluated the motion. I think it's clear that the officers probably didn't have the knowledge around the motion and its biodiversity claims in the policy. Otherwise, maybe our legal representative would have stood in to brief you, Chairman, to stand up for the member rather than stand up for the chairman, which I think he could have done if he was better briefed on what the planning policy that we were actually discussing contained tonight. So all in all, rather disappointing. What we won't do is subjugate ourselves to questions on future policy, of course, but I'm happy for any clarification questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Indeed. Thank you, Councillor Dillon. I just want to say at the beginning that I'm trying my best to make sure that we deal with this motion tonight. And it's a motion that criticizes the executive. And it is nothing to do in many respects with anything else to do with London Road and from a planning perspective. The planning aspects will be heard by the planning authority. It's a difficult one. I've worn the planning portfolio hat, and I know there are these Chinese walls because we're both the council is both the planning authority and it's also a landowner developer. It seems to me that they can be confused, and it's a difficult path sometimes to go down. But I think overall, So in my personal experience, we've managed to keep the two apart. Unfortunately, when we get to issues like this, they kind of overlap and get mixed up. I look at this like the council, like any other developer. Any other developer, as you know, can ignore whatever policy says. You know, policy says you can't develop outside the settlement boundary. We get lots of proposals coming in. It's up to the planning authority then to decide, is that particular proposal valid? Is does it in fact go against policy? And if it does go against policy, is there any sort of mitigating circumstances that weigh more on the other side? And that's the planning authority's side. Acting of the council then as the landowner can of course decide, and it has made, my reading of this is it has made, and maybe we hear a little bit more about this in the future. My reading of this, it has made recommendations. Because my clarification question, by the way, to yourself or Councillor Vickers was, and in my research, and I asked the officers, we could not find a specific date which said, on what date did the executive take a decision that you're objecting against?
Okay, well, I haven't got the date to hand, Mr. Chairman, but the fact that they're promulgating planning applications that result in the loss of the GI infrastructure and from a biodiversity gain as well, shows they have making a decision. I mean, I don't know, but do the council pay to submit a planning application, for example? And if we did, that would have been done either by an officer or an executive member saying, sign it off, here's the money to pay for the check for the planning. So a decision has been made, Mr. Chairman, by the executive of the way that it wants to go, that they've got the Averson Young plan as well, which talks about that being the first phase of development. I think it's quite clear, whether it's been signed off by an ID, that the executive have a clear direction of travel, and they have clearly demonstrated that direction of travel in the way that they have put forward applications.
And you know, that's the first thing I think I can agree with you on, sitting here tonight, I'm trying to rule and manage this in as mostly an unbiased way as I can. I do agree the council have taken and stated a direction of travel, all subject to planning permissions. And that's where I think we're getting into.
Yeah, and we are saying that we believe that to be in breach of policy already. You said, Mr. Chairman, any applicant can put in or behave however they want to. Our main point, as members of OSMC, and that's why we didn't try and raise it at a planning meeting, because we know we can't when it's policy. It was why we wanted it at full council, is to shine a light on how the executive are proposing their ideas, that they don't care about the policies of the council, because we believe that they find it more politically convenient to do what they want to do, to ride, you know, the way they have, that they don't want to have to evict people from the football ground again. So that's why they're not going to reopen it. And actually, a good point in law is that the fire a couple of weekends ago, I'm sure if we ask a planning officer now, is they actually may say that an illegal change of use has already happened on the site, because obviously it has planning permission to be a football club. It's now been unfortunately burnt down and bulldozed. So actually a change of use has probably already happened. Well, and then it would be down to the planning authority to take enforcement action against the council. You see, so well, I completely understand the separation.
That's a very torturous. It's a very torturous argument. It makes assumptions, and I'm not quite sure that either you or I are in a position to rule what the planners might say about the status. We'll probably hear about that when we take it.
Well, if we could ask that as a question for officers to come back with an answer on, I'd be interested in it.
I think that's I'd accept. That's a good point. Can we now move, please, to the portfolio holders and or the officers? Councillor Wollaston, Catherine, who wants to take this and present the other side of the debate, please?
Can I kick off, Chairman?
Go ahead.
Thank you. There is no question that this administration has consistently said that it wants to see economic development on the London Road Industrial Estate. That is a policy that we've held for many years. It's been in our manifesto and it's been quite clear. Now, part of that means that we have been in detailed discussions with Sport England, with the Football Association and with the Rugby Football Union about the sports provision within Newbury and overall in the West Berkshire area. That was in our playing pitch strategy approved in 2020. And when I took over the portfolio in May of last year, I started looking at the work that had been done so far to look at possible alternative sites, discounted all of them. We then had detailed approaches to a number of major landowners, and I also asked the officers to approach the Rugby Football Union, Newbury Rugby Club, I should say, who had previously declined any approach, but suddenly changed their mind and were pleased to discuss with us. At that stage, we then came to executive on I think it's the February the 19th from memory, to ask for consent to continue with negotiations with the rugby club to see whether a deal could be done. And thankfully, that could be done, and we've now submitted a planning application for what is a fantastic facility. To be clear, this is an artificial pitch which will allow it to be played on for 80 hours a week, as opposed to about 8 hours on Faraday Road. We will have a fantastic new clubhouse, proper facilities, including 4 changing rooms. It's a sensationally better facility than was on Faraday Road. And I'm in no doubt that it completely replaces it and exceeds anything that could be dreamt of back in 2018. The discussions we had with Sport England and Football Association also indicate that we need to find an additional grass pitch, which we're in the process of doing. We have looked at 2 possible alternatives, and detail work is being done at the moment to bring those up to a position where we can submit a planning application and obviously consult with the public. It is not appropriate to consult with the public when we have uncertainty about whether they are feasible as pitches. I have no doubt that the executive has operated in proper bounds. It is obviously operating as the owner of the Faraday Road site, not as the planning authority. They're completely separate. And I think this motion should be rejected.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman.
Excuse me, just before you start, I see I've got Councillor Vickers, your hand up. Was that something you wanted to?
No, thanks, Chairman. You sort of posed a question to Councillor Dillon a while back, saying that yourself and officers had failed to find any date at which the executive had made a decision. I mean, every time the executive brings something to do with LRIE to the executive, which of course is all Conservative votes and none in opposition, they've been doing so in order to make decisions. So I've lost count of the number of decisions. If you go right back until 2013-14, when the consultants were first engaged, Stratton Parker, for example. But you know, you're entitled to, as a council, as a development applicant, take account of planning policy and hope that you'll be right. But when you are also the local planning authority, it's very difficult for the public to see where this glass wall is. Yeah, many people have told me that.
I just wanted to find out the date, and it was just for a procedural. There was a motion. It's very process oriented, and usually when the motion was criticizing a decision of the executive, the motion actually refers to the date that decision was taken. And that's one of the things I was asking in preparation for this meeting was, when did that decision take place? And I would have thought that you would have had those.
Well, the main one, Chairman, I think it was in December, and it was when the executive, rather not you personally, you weren't on the executive, signed off the master plan as its policy, its business plan, if you like, vision, aspiration, but we still don't have any planning policy to back it up, and we are the council.
That's fine. We're getting into the planning and the Councillor Masters, you want to say something?
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to make a point about the date of when this. I think a significant date that obviously took a decision was when the football and the community groups were evicted back 3 years ago. So that's a fairly substantial line in the sand, if you like, that there was a desire to develop the area. So I think if no other time, that was definitely a decision that had impacts that we're still debating now. Thank you.
Thank you for helping to see if we can help with clarification. We've all got different recollections of the whys and the wherefores of some of that, I suspect. Can I hear from Catherine? Catherine, can you give me your side of the the debate, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The report that's been before you tonight responds to the motion that was put to Council on the 8th of July, and that's set out in full in the report. And that motion states the Executive has acted outside existing policies in relation to Faraday Road Football Club site and planning policy, specifically that relating to green infrastructure. And it further makes reference to the new facility being promoted at Newbury Rugby Club. Chairman, a lot of the things that have been said tonight have related to planning issues. There is no substantial planning application for the London Road Industrial Estate regeneration site at present. There are planning applications for the demolition of the former football clubhouse at Faraday Road and the creation of a temporary playing field which would be open to all sports and all people. And that's due to be discussed by District Planning Committee on the 8th of September. A planning application for Newbury Rugby Club at the Newbury Rugby Club for a Newbury Sports Hub is being processed. Any challenge to the decisions made by those planning committees will be subject to the planning regime. And therefore, Chairman, the specific recommendation in response to this motion, the words in this motion are to reject the motion on the basis that the decision is for the planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Anybody wish to make any points, any further questions? Councillor Rolls, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments, really. There seems to be a real blurring between the council being a landowner and actually the planning piece. So I think that's sort of blurring the lines. I'm also concerned that with the decision piece that you mentioned, Chairman, that the date of the decision, which that we seem to be scrutinising something where there hasn't actually been a decision. I also, in the actual motion, does it not say that green space, that basically no green space has been lost, and the motion says that we're in breach? So at this stage, I'm not clear on how we can agree with that, because we're not yet in breach. My final point is, Councillor Vickers sits on the Western Area Planning Committee. Is he not bordering on the lines of predetermination by getting more involved in the planning piece than perhaps he should?
Can I say, can we if it was a court of law, I'd be asked that last comment to be struck, please, because I don't think that's a matter for Councillor Vickers and any other councillor who sits on any of the planning committees, and it's a matter for them having taken advice from legal as to what their position is. I think, I'll let you come in, Tony. I think what you're highlighting, however, is this distinction between the council as the local planning authority and the council as the landowner. And when the landowner decides to, for whatever reasons, whether you agree with it or not, to terminate or not terminate a lease, not to renew a lease, that's perfectly within its right. As a landowner, it has nothing to do with planning. If it decides, however, it wants to do something with that physical site, then of course it has got to go through planning. And I also think that we get confused because whilst London Road Industrial Estate, the overall master planning aspirations of the council, and I know that this is where the politics come in, I know the other political parties have perhaps a different aspiration for London Road than the current administration has. The fact of the matter is the football pitch is only one small part of that whole aspiration, and yet we keep getting diverted into the whole of the London Road Industrial Estate debate. So I would like to very much try tonight as chairman to rule that we stick with this motion, which is specifically geared to the football pitch and specifically geared to whether or not the executive have taken decisions that they shouldn't have taken.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just add to that? You articulated the point I was trying to make about being a landowner and a planning authority much better than I did, but that was exactly what I was trying
No,
to
I
say.
thought you said it okay. I was
Thank you.
just reinforcing it. Councillor Vickers, you want to come back?
Thank you. I would like to respond to Councillor Rolls. Perfectly reasonable. And I think the public need to know about conflicts of interest and how members react, although it's our decision at the end of the day. I have decided I will not be at District Planning Committee. I will have a substitute. And I hope that sets an example, because there are clearly members of the executive who have similar conflicts of interest, and it is perfectly possible to constitute a committee at district level that has nobody on Newbury Town Council and nobody on this council's executive, where the public will see that there are no conflicts of interest. I hope that's what happens. I'm doing my bit. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other, Councillor Masters, you had your hand up for wanting to speak for some time.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't believe patience is a virtue, but I'll take that compliment. There's been a lot of talk about the blurred lines between OSMC and its ability to scrutinise this and planning. I don't know whether this is the right moment, but maybe that there needs to be because this is going to be coming up time and time again with the potential developments and the planning applications, and scrutiny is going to be required. I think the chairman would agree that maybe there's somewhere there needs to be a decision as to where something is complex and intersectional between different departments and authorities, especially with the fact that the council is both the applicant and the planning authority, where we need to have, where does this sort of thing get scrutinised?
Okay.
So that would be one of my, and I'd rather had my thunder stolen by Councillor Rolls and Councillor Vickers. One of my concerns was the potential conflict of interest between members of both Newbury Town, who have been quite vociferous against this, and also members of the executive. So I would second the force of the other members here to that end. That's pretty much my concerns, Chairman. But thank you. Yeah,
I think you make a good point about what is the role of OSMC in this. I'm going to turn to my legal colleague, because I certainly fully understand the law of the land does not allow us to scrutinise planning decisions. I think there's a little bit of a grey area about scrutinising policy, planning policy. Although to put your mind at ease, planning policy, i.e. the local plan, goes before the full council, and it's quite an interesting and long debate, which you probably haven't sat through yet, but it gets fully scrutinised. And in fact, there's nothing more scrutinised than a local plan. In fact, in my opinion, having gone through a couple of them, it's overly scrutinised because it ends up with a public hearing, but with, chaired by a independent inspector. In fact, there's no real role in many respects for OSMC to perform, but I don't believe, I'm not quite sure what the legal position is of OSMC on policy.
So, Chairman, I don't disagree with you. I agree with you on that. The standing orders of the Constitution is quite clear that the Scrutiny Overview and Scrutiny Management Commission has the power to review or scrutinize decisions taken by the executive or any other part of the council and make reports to the council or the executive. That does not include planning decisions, because that has its own route, and that's what's been clarified throughout this debate. I do agree. The motion that was referred to this commission clearly states that the council, the executive, has acted outside of the council's existing policies, and that's why it was referred here, because it was putting the executive, it was suggesting that the executive has acted outside of those policies. Now, and that's what you've been looking at and have to determine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my second point to come back to the discussions and answers I've had is how confident is OSMC and the council in particular and the executive that we won't face any legal challenges moving forward as a result of the ambiguity and the grey areas? I mean, is the council 100% watertight in terms of, on a legal standing?
Let me try and give you some comfort on that. I don't think the council will have done anything without taking a lot of legal advice. However, having sat through and been part of the architect of the core strategy and the DPD in 2016, developers and people, vested interests challenge everything. So, we're going to get challenges. There is no doubt about it. I think the key question is, have we done things that when challenged, we can justify, without going back into the whole legal thing around the earlier part of the London Road Industrial Estate. I think everybody agreed that it was we did everything. The council did everything with the best of intentions. Things just slipped through. But so I don't think the council would ever, in my experience, go off and do something intentionally that opens itself to challenge, but these things do happen.
Okay, thank you. I'm just concerned that we have had recent history and precedent of being taken to court and and losing. So I think there's a reputational issue again on this. So I'd hate to imagine that anything was going on that shouldn't be, Chairman.
I'm sure there will be nothing going on that shouldn't be, but that doesn't stop people challenging it. And now I've got Councillor Abbs.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms McCant was very specific about why members should reject this motion, citing very much the CS18 and the wording associated with it. My issue with that, and I think Councillor Vickers pointed this out already, the CS18 includes the word biodiversity at least twice in the policy. So by closing down any discussion of biodiversity as part of discussing CS18, we are missing a large chunk now of what should be considered before we make a decision. So I'm concerned that we are making a decision based on a lack of full information. And yes, I would accept the issue that I should have pointed out the word was there during my opening statement, and that would have made your job a little bit easier, I suspect. But we are now in a situation where we are missing a chunk of information and we're still going to go towards a decision.
I think, thank you. But I think the reason I did this is because I understand a little bit about planning and the like of CS18. The main point of CS18 is not biodiversity. It happens to be biodiversity, happens to be a linkage into it, from what I have been reminded, but it is not the main point of CS18. Can I just, Councillor Dillon, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Law. It was just to make some final comments really on this item, and just to go back to the comments by officers that the decision hasn't been taken by the executive. My question back, and it feels wrong that actually I'm even asking an officer this. If this was tabled at full council, this would be the portfolio holders justifying themselves, not officers of the council. So apologies for pushing this question maybe back at you. But if the executive hadn't made a decision, then how the hell have they got a planning application on the table? And what the motion was asking for the council as a body to listen to evidence and to determine that's what the motion calls on. If you were to vote in favour, you would then be resolving that the executive have made a decision contrary to policy. In effect, it was a charge. Yet we're hearing an officer coming back and saying, well, because it hasn't had a planning decision made, they haven't made a decision. We were saying before that, and obviously we didn't, when this was tabled, I don't think there was even a date for when the planning application was going to be heard. But the fact that they are proposing something that, in our view, was contrary to the green infrastructure and planning policies, that was why we called on the motion. And it shows the complete farce, really, of the situation we're in, that we're now going to an overview and scrutiny where officers say we haven't got the power to review the planning side of it. And then we've also got an officer of the council saying that the executive haven't made any decisions because planning hasn't been granted. A complete farce, Mr. Chairman. A process, not your chairmanship.
Yeah, but it's a very, don't forget, a motion is a very procedural device, which is why I'm kind of very keen to stick to process and procedure as opposed to either a political debate or an otherwise debate. I've got Councillor Cole and Councillor Rolls and then Councillor Marino. And after that, I'm going to take this to a conclusion.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to this debate with interest, as Councillor Vickers well knows. As far as precedents are concerned, each planning application is treated on its own merits. So this will not necessarily be a precedent. Councillor Abbs, we are aware of the risk element. We do have some experience of this particular site, and I'm sure that's what Councillor Masters was referring to. Yes, Councillor Dillon, we do fundamentally disagree on this subject, and I know this raises strong feelings. I was approached at some length on this by a resident of Enbourne only a week ago. The fact is that we do have an alternative site now, and Sport England is satisfied. This is not a new proposal. As Councillor Wollaston told us, it was in our manifesto for the last election. Personally, I'm glad if some decisions have been made on direction of travel, as it is time for progress to be made towards a far better football facility. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, point of information.
Go ahead.
Would Councillor Cole therefore agree that the executive have made decisions?
On direction of travel, publicly, in our manifesto for the last election. I repeat myself.
Yes, I don't think that particular point in dispute, that decision on the direction of travel has been taken and debated. I don't think that, but from a procedural point of view on the motion, no, we can have a different opinion. We could have a different opinion. Can I call on Councillor Rolls again, please?
Yeah, and sorry to labour, thank you, Chair. Sorry to labour the point, but we're being asked to consider if the executive has acted outside the council's existing policies. How on earth can we consider that if no decision has been made? I mean, I mean, we can talk about direction of travel, we can talk about all sorts of things, but effectively, no decision has been made, and therefore, I don't feel that that this motion has to be rejected on the basis that there has been no decision made. I mean, it's a big call to suggest that the executive has acted outside existing policies. I can't see how we can possibly come to that decision when the executive haven't made that decision formally, no date, no nothing. We're kind of talking about direction of travel. We're talking about inferences through putting in planning applications. Fundamentally, no decision has been made. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Marino.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, again, I don't want to labour the point. I'm in agreement with my Conservative colleagues. I think obviously there've been decisions made on the direction of travel, but can't really support the motion as it currently stands. I'm afraid I believe the executive has been acted appropriately. There hasn't been any decision on it made. It's for the planning, and I just wish this political football would get put away. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you, and finally, Councillor Vickers, you'll have the last word.
Chairman, I think if that sentence beginning, the executive have acted, had been then followed by in relation to green infrastructure, it might have been read slightly differently. The executive has acted. It has acted for many years and making decisions, committing money, foregoing business rates income. It has taken decisions with an open mind, probably in all honesty thinking they were the best decision, but with minimal concern about existing planning policies. That's the point. It's not that the executive has made any decisions in terms of planning policies. It's not able to do that. That is the LPA. That's a fundamental issue which people don't seem to have got, maybe because of the way in which that sentence is worded. It's not that it has acted outside of green infrastructure policy, but it has acted in relation to green infrastructure outside of green policy. Maybe I'm still not clear. I'm clear in my mind that it has definitely acted and made numerous decisions, most notably when it adopted a master plan, which according to its own consultants is not in accord with planning policy. And yet it's proceeding with that, still no planning application.
But can I just go before I'd like to come to a conclusion on this, but I just wanted to try and summarize. I'm trying to stick here strictly to the procedure on this motion, and that's what council have put to us as a commission. They didn't put to us that we were going to have a whole debate on the pros and cons, whys and wherefores of London Road Industrial Estate. They did that, which we have wandered into, and I understand why. And I understand we have differences of opinion across parties on that, and that's fair enough. And decisions have already been taken on that. It's quite clear that this is one of those difficult things. I'm sure difficult for the press and the public to follow the fact that we as a council wear two hats. We're a planning authority, and we also are landowners and developers. And I keep coming back to the fact that many developers that we know, many who are very close to us, and we see them in planning committees all the time, make proposals that you would say are contrary to our planning policies. Not all of them get turned down because of that. Some of them do. Some of them, they have other reasons that are in the planning balance, as you well know, those of us who are on the committees, the planning balance outweighs the negativity. And who knows how these things are going to go. I'm sure the administration would be arguing that the overall development of the London Road, including the football pitch and the mitigations they've put in place, far and away outweigh any negatives from an existing policy. But that is not for us to debate here tonight. That's for the planning committee to debate in the future. We've got a motion put down here, very, very strict, that the executive have acted outside the council's existing policy in relation to green infrastructure, and we have the portfolio holders and the administration and the officers saying no, that is not a valid motion. So I am going to ask for a show of hands on the motion as presented tonight.
Can I, just a clarification question I forgot to ask Mr. Chairman earlier on. It's in the officer's report on the impact assessment. It's just at various times the report states the new recreation ground will be available for all sports. Can we just have that confirmed that it's available for all sports? Because that's what the report states.
Catherine.
And it's not just football.
Yeah, the planning application is proposing that form pitch can turn into open application space, so it's going to be playing field, which should be open to anyone to use for any sport.
So you'll be able to play golf on it.
For any
Sorry?
sport.
No, it doesn't. Okay, so we've got the motion, which I'm going to ask for a vote on. Okay, so all those in favour of the motion as debated tonight, please show. In favour of the motion. So that's 4-4. All those against. And that's 4 against. And I'm afraid as chairman, I've got my casting vote, and my casting vote's against. So that's it. Okay. Oh, good debate. Let us move to the next item on the agenda, which is, if I can find it, I think that's Jenny. Is that you with the environmental strategy?
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting to move on to the next item, given the debate that came up and some questions that were asked around decision making, could officers provide us a list of every time the executive have made a decision relating to the London Road football club side, please, so we can have it in a chronological list for future reference. So, for example, when did an officer or an executive member agree to put that particular plan and application in? I think someone would have said, yeah, put that application in. We're happy with roughly what it looks like. That might have been an individual officer, but making a decision under a scheme of delegation, for example, which I'm sure an officer wouldn't make if their portfolio holder wasn't in support.
May I make a suggestion, councillor? I may listen to you, it's a very broad question. Could you possibly put that into a question in the form of words? And I don't think it has got to come through OSMC. I think that's something that you can handle direct to question to council or question to the executive. Yeah. So, Jenny, are you ready to lead us onto your paper, please? We've been asked to, which we've been asked to note the main, to note four main things. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for your interest in this area of work and the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I hope that the paper provided to you has provided you with an indication of the implementation of the environment strategy that was approved by the executive just over a year ago. Included in your paper at Appendix C, I hope that that diagram gives you a bit of an overview of the progress in this regard. That is just a draft of something that we are working on for our annual progress report that will be reported to the executive in November of this year. The version of the delivery plan that is in your pack is the version that was the first version that was approved by executive last month. And that will be updated on a monthly basis with progress against any of the schemes. It's also worth me saying that we do recognise the importance of putting some figures against the carbon savings against key actions and projects within that delivery plan. And that is an important area of work that we are doing currently. It's important because it will enable us to indicate the direction of travel and our progress towards our 2030 target of carbon neutrality. And it's also important in order for us to be able to prioritise projects and resources. I think that one aspect of the work that maybe this paper doesn't cover, and I think is worth highlighting, is the setting up of the West Berkshire Parish Climate Forum, which came about because parishes have asked for it. So we have been meeting for a few months, and I think it's just worth highlighting the enthusiasm and the really good projects that our communities are engaged with. I hope that forum will be useful for them, and it's certainly useful for us to know what's going on across our communities and to make some really important links and get some partnership working going. Our environment strategy stressed the importance of everyone working together to reach this West Berkshire target. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more from our local communities. And I just thought it'd be worth highlighting the variety of projects that they're already engaged with. I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have this evening. And thank you again for the opportunity to discuss this area of work.
Okay, thank you very much, Jenny. I tell you what, I actually found some of your little diagrams and tables very, very helpful. It's yeah, I think from a presentational point of view, I'd like to congratulate you on the report. I'm sure we have no questions and contents, and the first hand I saw up was Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. I read this at length. I made an awful lot of notes, so you'll be pleased to know that I cut it down a bit. The team involved has come a very long way. 512, for example, on cross-team working tells us how much the council's changing. The document shows we've really listened to public reactions. Table 1, page 50, gives us some really good actions as a result. A vast amount of useful work has already been done. Like some others here, I'm on the Environment Advisory Group, so this is not new to me. But also, it doesn't mean that I'm entirely happy with everything. And we are 2 years in now. I feel there's still too much concentration on council activities. I know they're easier to deal with. I don't say they shouldn't happen. But other things shown as not started do now need to start. I get a feel from this document, or indeed from my attendance at the EAG, about the numbers that our strategies actually need to deal with, or are going to be able to deal with, how much we'll actually hit that 2030 deadline. For example, there's an action on 5253. Relevant actions should have an estimated carbon saving associated with them. There's also a reference to breaking CO2 down per resident, blah, blah. There is now a tool that's available on the internet. I was sent it by a member of Hungerford Town Council, and I've sent it on to our council leader for a look. I don't know whether that particular tool is accurate, but the little playing with it that I've done did show some variations by parish that did make sense. So we are beginning to be able to get at this sort of information. To me, at high level, we generate heat and carbon emissions and our planet warms. At its simplest, there are two things. Use different means of generating power and heat. Yes, we're working on this and we could influence more what our residents use. Use less, don't waste it. We are doing better, but I have no real feel for what are the biggest emitters and what we can or will do about it or them. We warm our buildings and houses. We've not really started on upgrading existing building stock. That's a big job. Our planning policies do not require genuinely eco-friendly buildings yet. Don't give benefit or priority to eco-friendly buildings. This has got to change. It is cross-service. It certainly needs central government to permit change too. So if we have to lobby, we have to lobby. Again, rather high level, page 43, Council Strategy Priorities says, main council priorities which the projects and actions within the delivery plan contribute is maintain a green district. And 520 goes on, does comment that there are other actions which will not necessarily result in reducing carbon. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. All of it. This, I agree with all of it. But I do think there needs to be a change of emphasis. We declared a climate emergency. I remember promoting the idea myself. The priority must be the climate emergency, not maintaining a green district, in my view. At the end of the day, does it matter how many trees we plant if they all get flooded or frazzled? That, to me, is the priority. And the document doesn't bring it out. Lastly, and you'll be pleased now I'm coming to an end, I'm reminded in 4.5 that progress will be reported to the Environment Advisory Group, Environment Board, and annually to the Executive. Annually? On something that's due to be done by 2030? Should that really be annually? So I happily agree to note the report, but shall we say with a must do better mark? Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Masters.
Thank you, Chairman. And like so often, especially at the EAGs, I find myself agreeing with Councillor Cole on many of his points, so I won't labour too many that came up in mine. I congratulate Jenny for putting this report together. What I would say is, and I think I share Councillor Cole's urgency, it is an emergency that we're facing and we need to be addressing that. Without going into too much detail, there's a number of things that we, on the actions and the overview, that we should be more ambitious with, not only as an environment board, but as an executive and as a council. So I'm sure alongside Councillor Cole, I'll be pushing for some more robust targets. You know, we do have a modest housing stock, the council, for example, and that would be one way where we could, maybe be proactive in the retrofitting of insulation and making those properties less carbon intensive. So, that's just one example. And as I said, I'm not going to labour over a multitude, but I think, we are 2 years in. It's 2.5 years since I put the petition together before the election that precipitated this council's commendable decision to unanimously declare an emergency for 2030, and I applaud the council and Councillor Doherty as leader for that. But we do have to be seen to be more proactive. It's not for everybody to be demonstrating on the streets, but there is a strong feeling in our community that the council should be doing substantially more than it is, albeit well intended for what it is. And my final point is to Jenny. You mentioned the parish commission in terms of environmental. Do you have any figures on how many parishes are proactively involved at this point, Jenny, and how you're going to increase participation? Thank you.
Jenny, perhaps you could just note that and I'll come back to you at the end. Okay. Just as a point of interest, we as a council do not have too many of our own houses. I think we've got a few for temporary accommodation, and what generally we sold all. A previous administration sold all of those off to Sovereign.
Point of information: I asked a question that either the last council or last executive. We have 75 properties, and I was assured by Councillor Cole, not James, that none of them were for emergency accommodation. So they are on tenancies.
Actually,
including, I think
that number.
I think they're sporadically.
It's not minuscule, but it's in the great scope of thing. It's
but it is a significantly reasonable number that would make, if not a huge difference to the carbon impact. It would show our intent and willing.
I'm not arguing that point. I was just trying to put the scale on it. I was always impressed when I got involved with this way back that the standard of build for social housing was always much higher than for market housing. And it's one of those things that I'm sure Lee is.
I'll have to declare an interest if you keep looking at me, Chairman.
and I think
it's a good interest, isn't it? It is.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that part of that strategy is working with,
absolutely,
property owners such as Sovereign, who form a large part of the portfolio across
absolutely
to do the best, and maybe take a stick to them occasionally if they're falling behind.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, can I declare an interest as an employee of a company that Councillor Masters is suggesting the council take some action against?
Okay, including carrots. Okay, I've got Councillor Abbs followed by Councillor Rolls.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
I'm sorry, Tony.
I think I should also say that I'm a member of EAG, and like my two colleagues, we are in vehement agreement most of the time in terms of the speed at which we need to take action. My concern always remains, will we reach 2030 target on time? And the input I've got for OSMC is that, looking at the title of what the report is this evening, it says to provide information to the Overview and Scrutiny Management Commission relating to the progress in implementing the environmental strategy. Great. I then look at all the detail, as everybody else has done, I'm sure. And to be honest, it's nearly impossible to say whether we're on target or not, based on the way the information is presenting to us. It doesn't take away the value of all the great work that's been done and all the strategic plans that are coming along and so on and so forth. It's just, as an OSMC committee, for me to review that quantity of data and be able to go, congratulations, you're on track, or sorry, got to do better. It's lacking. And so I contacted John Winstanley this morning and copied in Jenny and some others. And some of you may remember me bringing it up at a previous council meeting, not OSMC, about having a thermometer that gives us a number that we can look at. However, having read this report and looked at it a few times, I don't think one thermometer is going to do the job anymore. I think we need several thermometers, and I think they need to be pretty much in line with what James shared with us earlier. Yeah, in energy installation.
Well, I'll come back to Jenny. I think that the indication, to use your analogy, the temperature is rising, but we don't quite know what's going on.
Well, indeed. So I have put that together. I would quite happily share that with the rest of the members of OFMC, because it's meant as a positive thing for allow OSMC members to look at a single diagram and go, are we on track or not? And of course, a follow-on diagram, which will be updated every year in line with the strategy, that basically shows us in those key areas, are we actually getting down there? So a chart as well as some thermometers. I think with that, then we can all get behind. My concern is, Chairman, is that we will see that we're miles off. We are seriously miles off achieving 2030. And I know we've had some assurances by the portfolio holder that we'll be okay, but without the numbers to back that up, well, I'm not by myself, but lots of people are going, well, how are we okay when we haven't got any numbers to prove it?
Okay. I'll leave that to Jenny to come back on as well, because I'm sure we have got key performance indicators related around this whole thing. I'd like to understand just what, that should give us a degree of temperature reading.
Chairman, there are colours associated in it, but the colours are very hard to understand.
Your point's well made. Councillor Rolls. Sorry, Councillor. I missed Councillor Vickers, and if you don't mind, I'd like to take him in. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a member of EAG, but I agree totally with what the members on my right have said, in particular, Councillor Cole. But there's one thing I'd like to add. And speaking as a member of an outside body that has a particular specialised interest in this, that's the Local Access Forum. I'm concerned that the top risk in the risk register on page, 79 of our papers, is number one, lack of buy-in from WBC staff, schools, community groups and businesses. There's an awful lot to do outside of this council. There's only a limited amount that we can do ourselves. I fully understand why we start with our own, putting our own house in order, literally some cases if we're talking about buildings. We're not even doing that. We're not even getting joined up action between, shall we say, education and planning. We've had a school that's been built with no solar panels because it saved money. Well, there must be money coming into this council. This was a council-run project. Anyway, that's just one in. The point I want to make is, and maybe it's a question, in fact, it is definitely a question to Jenny, if she has the answer tonight, is what progress have we made so far in reaching out to community groups, businesses, particularly the farming industry? And I assiduously follow both Penny Post's Brian Quinn and Andrew Davis to keep myself up to date with farming. And there's clear potential here with the environment bill coming in, with concerns by NADAS over its own future, the fact that it is an educational charity. There's great opportunities here, but it's not just officers who need training to reduce this risk. This is the only risk in the risk register where the solution lies within ourselves as a council, within the district. Everything else that is reduced from red to orange, red to amber, is actually, we're not in control. It's up to government policy and things like that aren't within our control. This is, in the greatest sense, within our control to reach out more proactively. Every one of us, I know some of us have full-time jobs, some of us don't. So we can't all reach out in the same way. We members, not just the staff, need to be better educated and need to be really proactive. I think of my grandchildren every night and wonder what their lives are going to be like. This is an emergency. We have very few years to deal with it. We must waste no time and no resources in getting on with it with our partnerships in the district.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Vickers stole my thunder a tiny bit with some of my questions, one of which was to Jenny in terms of what we have done to engage local communities more, and particularly the farming community, which I noticed was on the report several times with not much action. But to start with, I'd just like to say I'm on the EAG as well. I congratulate Jenny and the team because they have come a long way. And I agree with much of what's been said by my colleagues and my ward colleague, Councillor Cole, in terms of I think we've really achieved a lot. This is a national, this is a global huge challenge for everybody. It's no easy task. But one thing I was concerned with is some of looking at the detail in the report, despite much progress being made, there was quite a lot of short-term objectives or points that actually we haven't even started. And I was surprised at some of them. So for example, if you look at, I think it's CN 007, design and undertake robust audits of councils' building portfolio to identify energy consumption profiles. I'm really surprised that we're not actually looking at some perhaps a bit more low-hanging fruit around some of our own assets. And also some of the priorities, there's quite a few short-term priorities that haven't even been started, is I think my point. And another one I'd like to highlight going around communications. I know we've seemed to have done a lot with parish and town councils, but if you look at it's REG 008, design effective communications to help grow new and existing local green businesses and provide them with effective business advice. And then it goes on to say general business advice is included on the WBC website. To me, that is absolutely what we should be pushing post-COVID, particularly to encourage more local green businesses to thrive. And yet I think that hasn't even been started. So I question where we're putting the priorities on the communications particularly, because I think, as you said, Jenny, it's all about engaging the community and getting West Berkshire engaged rather than just us obviously we're driving it, but it's all about that engagement. So those are my only comments and questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. Jenny, would you like to come back? There's been a few points made there that I think you need to come back on.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will try and cover as much as I can. I've been making notes. Thank you for your general comments. I think it's been said, it's obviously 2 years since the climate emergency was declared. That first year after the declaration of the climate emergency was very much about getting the strategy in place, and that was done on the existing resources in the council, and it did involve quite a huge amount of engagement work. The environment delivery team that is in place now has only been in place for some of us for about a year, and it has been built during this year. So I think that's one of the activities that the council has done, is resourced the team, so that has grown, and that obviously takes some time to do. But I'm really pleased with the new people that we've got in, and we are building momentum as a team, and even recruiting now greater numbers to that team. It's really encouraging to hear the comments about the fact that more speed, I suppose, is needed, and I think these are all things that we're very much aware of. I might start actually with Councillor Rolls's comment, even though it was one of the last ones to be made, in that I think potentially the number of actions in our delivery plan and the point was made, the number of short-term actions that are not yet started. Potentially we've been a little bit too harsh on ourselves and a little bit too cautious about saying when something has started. So I might review that, because I think some of those things we have actually started, but it might be that you haven't seen any actions yet. So maybe we've been a little bit too honest about has it been started, has it not been started? So hopefully with the update of that of the delivery plan, we can be a bit clearer about how many things have been started. The reaching out to businesses and communities, that is very much happening, and we've had a number of meetings with different community groups. Some that might surprise you, like the WI have been in touch and we've met with them. Just as an example, there's a number of community groups that we have met with and started to make some links with. Today, there was a key West Berkshire business that officers from the economy team and the environment delivery team met with, and some really exciting things could come out of that. So there is quite a lot of work going on there, and we will now be developing very much the business side now that we've got the business engagement officer that started earlier this month. Some of the other points that were made, yes, engagement with the farming industry and agricultural industry in general. We're very clear that this needs to happen. This is a really important part of the delivery plan. And we, in a week or so's time, have got the first meeting of what we're proposing to develop, which is a natural solutions delivery partnership across West Berkshire, engaging key players that work with the farming industry, agricultural industry, and we will be having that first meeting. So that's a really important area. We want to set it up right. We want to engage with the AONB, with BBOUT, with National Farmers Union, all the people that work in that area. We want us all to be working collectively in the same direction. So that is something that we're very much starting to do. The idea of a thermometer from Councillor Abbs, absolutely. We want to find the right way to communicate progress. We recognise at the moment we might not have the facts and figures for all the actions to be able to put that together right now, but there's been lots of ideas about how we can best communicate in a informative but simple way the progress. I like the images that Councillor Abbs shared earlier to myself and John Winstanley, and other examples have been given to us as well. So we're very much working on that, and we're really clear that that's important to people. So apologies that we haven't got there quite yet, but we're very clear that that needs to happen, and we're working on that. As I said earlier, there is going to be an annual progress report that will be presented to the executive in November, and that will give clear figures about the council's own carbon footprint and the progress made there. So that will be available there. And working across the council, planning policies were mentioned, and very much we are working with colleagues in planning policy in terms of the review of the local plan, and trying to make sure we've got the evidence together to get really good policies in there to ensure that the local plan is helping to deliver the aims of the environment strategy and the aims very much of the climate emergency that was declared. Oh, Councillor Masters asked about the climate, the parish climate forum. I've had a quick look, and we're on average getting about 18 different parishes represented at those sessions. They're being held every 5 to 6 weeks. We've had, I think, only 3 so far, so momentum is sort of hopefully will build, and we're trying to engage more each time. It's not the same 18 that are attending each time. There are some that have attended all sessions, but yeah, I can provide details. And I would ask members, encourage those parishes in your areas, please, if they're interested, please get involved. It's for their benefit, and hopefully it's a good way of exchanging ideas and encouraging those local communities not to feel like they're trying to do this on their own, but actually can join with others and share examples of projects. I hope I've covered most of those questions, but yes. Happy to cover any that I've missed.
Thank you, Jenny. I saw Councillor Cole's hand going up again. James, you wish to say anything, or is that an old hand?
That's a new one.
It's a new one. Go ahead.
The agricultural side, Jenny, you didn't mention what I would call any real farmers. You listed lots of organizations, but they don't necessarily do any real farming. So I would ask you to include some real farmers. I say this because I'm still on the, shall we say, on the edge of the agricultural world myself. I spent much of the last few days derusting and repainting a grain trailer. That's my only comment, I think, from what you have said.
Thank you. Councillor Abbs, is that an old hand?
Yeah, sorry, it is, Chairman. I'll take it down momentarily.
Councillor Rolls, that's a new one, I think.
Sorry, very quickly, don't mean to repeat points, but just to reinforce what Councillor Cole has just said, I come from a farming background and I would be very keen, Jenny, to have real farmers, as Councillor Cole suggests, in the mix. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just reinforce that. My favourite pub in the world is the Bell at Aldworth. There's several farmers come in on a Saturday or a Sunday. And I got to say, they're probably the most skeptical lot when it comes down to climate change that you'll come across. So they do need to be engaged with. So, okay. Jenny, I think on behalf of the Commission, I think that's an interesting debate. I noticed we just to note the report. It's a report of progress. The point made is how far along should we be versus, what we have done. And I think one of the points that resonated with me personally, if I can just say personally, was from Councillor Cole, is perhaps we need to think about doing a review on this every 6 months, perhaps rather than every 12 months. It's one of those, it's a slow mover, but it needs to be a fast mover as well at the same time. It's a long-term thing. That would be my only comment. So thank you very much indeed, Jenny. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, I believe, is memberships of task and finish groups. I don't think we've any changes, have we?
I haven't been notified of any, Chairman. It's just a standing item.
Fine, thank you very much. And then we're into task and finish group updates. Now we haven't got Councillor Hurley here, who's on the leisure strategy task, who's heading the leisure strategy task group. I didn't receive anything from him either on an update. So we will go to, I think, the Health and Scrutiny Committee update. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Chair. Very brief update, because I don't have a huge amount to say, but we held our first meeting on the 11th of August. And as I mentioned last time, the main agenda items were the joint health and wellbeing strategy, and also an update from Health Watch, where Andrew, so Sharp, exactly. Thank you. Andrew Sharp presented their annual report. So that was all really that I had to report on that. But we're looking at the next date for our meeting in November, and also the officer Gordon Oliver is looking at doing a schedule of dates for next year so that we have the dates in the diary. And I would just like perhaps to discuss with you, Chair, separately the timing of those around OSMC, because we're inviting external bodies to some of the meetings. It's not always possible to dovetail around OSMC, but I'm hoping that providing I can provide an update to the committee, that will be acceptable. And in terms of what we're looking at on the November agenda, and again, this is to be confirmed, subject to availability of external people, is dentistry. We also, so obviously that will determine potentially the date, but we're also going to be looking at CAMS Tier 4, which is support for people with most severe mental health, and basically where the hospital-based facility is moving to a community-based alternative, and we're looking at whether the consultation around that has been adequate. And also finally, just the protocol for engaging with third parties, because obviously it's a new committee, so we're still setting up some nuts and bolts, and also the PIC prioritization method in terms of what we're prioritizing and at what meetings.
Thanks. Do we have any news at all in the Joint Health Committee?
In terms of?
Oh, this one across Buckinghamshire.
Not to my knowledge. I'm looking at
I was chased
Mr. Oliver.
incessantly about getting involved in it, and now we're ready to go.
I haven't heard anything.
Has it all gone quiet?
Chairman, just to say that the terms of reference have now been approved by all the local authorities. Woking was the last one. I believe they approved it in July. Discussions are just taking place at the moment about first meeting.
So all the process is set up, but we haven't had any action yet, is it?
Correct.
Okay, fine. Thanks. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Claire. Next two items probably try to take together. Firstly, the council forward plan. Any comments or anything on that, on the forward plan that you want to talk about?
Yes, Chairman.
Go ahead, Tony.
Just been looking at it just now, actually, for the first time, I have to admit. But there are a number of things that that I would like to raise and perhaps consider for our work programme. Joint Public Protection Committee, a couple of items there which look of interest, and I'm not sure how we scrutinise as ONSC. I mean, these are bodies which, as opposition, we have no input to. And I think it would be really useful to find out, particularly when we look at the LRIE with its contamination, to look at what the contaminated land strategies are of the three councils and the JPPC. And then there's food and feed, which looks like a farming matter. So I think, again, there would be considerable interest in the public domain in some of these things. You know, I think it was Andrew Davis's column where he said that 95% of our district is being farmed or being, managed woodland. And that's amazing. And yet we have very little say in what happens there. Food and feed, please, can we consider looking into that or hearing more about it?
The way to do this, and I'm not saying no to any of that, is we try to put the program 18 months out if we can. And the program runs for about 12 months at the moment. So we do have that, the back end to fill in. The way to do that, if you don't mind, is could you just put some of those, a little bit of structure around some of those thoughts? If you've just looked at it.
Yeah, I'll put a note to you or if there's a form.
Send it to myself and Gordon, and I'll pick this up then with the Vice Chairman as well.
Yeah, just one other point I had on the forward plan. It's not for us, but I think we should comment on it. It's still got October as the date for the Reg 19 consultation. That's decision C4119.
Yeah.
I think that's out of date.
I think that's a moving feast, that one. So that's, I think we can forgive people for not keeping it up to date on that particular topic. Now then, for our own work program, Councillor Dillon, you had made a suggestion. Would you like to just share that with us all?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As probably most members will be aware, a few weekends ago, West Berkshire officers had a particularly tough weekend with the fire at the football club, but also on that Friday night, the start of unauthorised works without prior planning permission within my ward, which resulted in obviously lots of concerned residents and lots of phone traffic to various partners and agencies, etc. Now, I'd like to say, Mr. Chairman, that the 2 weekends since that initial one, the council have put in robust out-of-hour procedures and resources in place to make sure that residents were reassured, particularly over a bank holiday weekend as well. And so for those officers who at short notice gave up their weekends to be available on behalf of the community, I'd like to say thank you to them. And also, in fairness, Graham, Lynn and Richard, as the executive portfolio holders, have been responsive as well. However, what we did see on that initial weekend was, first of all, confusion from residents. No comment there apart from there was confusion. And so I think we could do better as organisations about signposting where people should contact. But also what people should then expect a council to do. And we as members, what do we want our council out of our service to look like? And look, I run the out of our service at Sovereign now, and you can have the gold level service, but it will cost. or you can have an answer phone service. We're in between those models here. So I've drafted some terms of reference. Apologies, I didn't share those with commission members before this evening, but I did share them with Lynn and with Carolyn as the leader of the Greens, and with the chairman of Overview and Scrutiny as well. As I said, I think we need to look at our resources. We need to look at how we allow residents to report in. So can they do it by a tweet or a Facebook post? Does it have to be by phone, for example? A little taster, Mr. Chairman, when you phone up out of hours, you don't get put through to an out of hours service. You have to go and find a pen and paper, write the number down, and then redial it. Well, if you're in a field, like I was on Saturday, you don't necessarily have those to hand. So that's what the review's asking. But I also know that those officers who can help a task group, if the Commission supports this proposal, are currently working on the very issue that I raised. So I know that officers' time is better spent at the moment still on reacting to the unfolding situation. But we are going to have to get together, I think, to look at the way forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I just add my penny's worth there. Having spoken to Lee and asking him, as I've just asked your good self, can you put some meat in the bones of that? And he sent it to me as well. And I found myself in agreement. I personally have a month or two, 6 weeks ago now, had a bad experience on a Saturday with the out of hours. Although I got explanations for what had happened. It just concerned me that when you got through, the options on the telephone system were more concerned about lost dogs than they were about traffic lights or accidents on the road. And so some of our priorities on that. So I think we really do need to look at kind of the systems around it and the customer perception and the customer interaction. I think the interaction with the customer is a bigger thing than out of hours. But I think it's a good one to have a start with. I totally agree. My suggestion, by the way, and maybe we'll take this offline with Gordon, we're going to change a few things. We've got on December a topic which is called effective employee appraisal and management training and development. I'm wondering, is this something, I know during our interview process, we raised this, didn't we, with all the candidates. I'm wondering if we maybe just need to give the new chief executive and the director teams a little bit longer on that one. So we could possibly, if we can, start off the out of hours aim for December, and perhaps move that one, Gordon, to a later date. And when I look at these things, we did this, as you will recall, we agreed that we'd like to try and get ahead on things like performance and financial reporting. We currently get that almost a quarter late, and we get it after the executive. And we've all agreed, including the leader and the chief executive and the rest of the teams, that we should get first dabs at that. And we've agreed that in principle. Trying to sort out our dates, however, to make that happen has been almost impossible for the rest of this year. So I think we're going to stick with what dates we've got, with the intention, not just the intention, it will happen when we put the calendar together for next year, which comes to count the December council. So the timetable of the December council for next year will in fact have our OSMC 2 weeks ahead of that necessary executive. And that's to give us a chance to comment, but also give the executive a chance to see the comments in the papers and be able to respond. So we do that. So having done that, one of the things I'd like to talk to Gordon about as well is perhaps if I look and say we've got one in December and then nothing else until the 22nd of March, we might actually need to put something in February, bring another OSMC. I'm not going to do it for the sake of it,
It may be a standard one there, Chairman, is a review of the winter service plans.
Could very well be. Well, we could still be in the middle of the bloody winter by then, couldn't we? Yeah, indeed. Let's have a look at that. It's just an indication that we might, and I think Gordon and I need to talk about that along with your good self, Lee, and see what we can do. Everyone else happy with that? Okay. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Chair. I'm conscious Councillor Vickers was ahead of me. I was your hands up. The only thing I was going to, I think I really welcome this. Obviously, I wasn't aware because until you actually sort of experience it yourself, it's difficult to know that where the problems are. But is there something in an interim emergency that we've rectified to respond better to in the short term? My concern is if we wait till, presumably something that there is temporary until it's all set in stone.
Yeah, so I think, and Sue may want to speak on this, obviously, as our interim chief executive, but over the last couple of weekends, there has been clear procedures in place. All the residents affected have been told about email addresses that are monitored 24/7 for them as well. So we've absolutely got something in place, but that's only for one site across the whole district. If something happened at that site and something else happened in the district, I suspect there's another level of contingency thinking that Sue.
We're very good at reacting quickly on major things like that. Okay, yeah. But it's almost like fighting the last war. We've got to start thinking what's the next war going to look like. So this is much more of a proactive exercise rather than a look back and blame. Okay, Tony, did you have your hand up?
No, it was an old hand, but I'm tempted to talk about fighting the last war, but I'll put that. Cheers.
Yeah, define when the last war.
Personal memories,
when the last war was. Yes, indeed. Okay, fine. Members, I think that's it for the evening. It's been a long, but I think that was a very useful debate, and I thank you all. So I'll close the meeting.